What's up, model makers? It's time for another quick review of something that I think is very cool. And that is the new single model weathering book by Mike Rinaldi. This is sm.02. It's the second one in his series. And this comes on the heels of his very cool and very popular tank art series. And I think that once you see what he's got in store for you here, that you'll agree this is pretty neat. So let's take a look. All right, let's take a look at this book. Now, one of the first things I'm sure that you'll notice is that it's got this small square size. And some people might think that's a little odd, but I don't. And part of the reason is because I think I understand one of the reasons why Rinaldi chose to do it this way. I've produced a few photography books of my own, and I can tell you that one of the major cost drivers is paper cost, and that is directly related to paper size. And so if you want to use really high quality paper like he's done in this book, which definitely gives it a real feel of quality and just makes it a nicer reading experience, then that definitely is going to cost money. So I totally understand why he chose to make it small. And the fact is, it doesn't really need to be any bigger, because the quality of the photography in here, as you will see, is so good that the pictures are plenty big enough, and the close-ups are really good. So there's just not much reason for it to be any bigger. Now, I'm not going to go through this thing page by page for a couple of reasons. One is that would just be rude, because well, if I showed you every single page, then you wouldn't need to go buy Mike's book. But the other reason is that there have already been several reviews done where the reviewers gave you a good look at quite a bit of it. Adam Mann in particular did a nice overview of the book that shows basically what the contents are. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. What I am going to talk more about is what Mike actually talks about in this book and his philosophy, because I've just finished reading it and I loved it. I thought it was great. Now, one thing that he does in here that has been pointed out that's worth repeating that I think is really cool is if you look here on the table of contents page, you'll see where he talks about the why and the how layout guide. And that's one thing that he does in here, where he talks about not only how he's going to do something. You can see here this section is labeled H, and it's in darker ink, and then right next to it is this section in gray that's labeled W. This is the how, the what you're going to do, and this is the why, the reasoning behind it, which I think is really good, not only for experienced model makers, but for folks who are a little further down on the learning curve. Because one thing that I find frustrating with a lot of books like this is that they give you lots of pretty pictures and show you lots of products, but they don't really break it down into the rationale of why you should use those particular products or work in a particular way. And Mike does a really, really good job of that. Another thing that he does a really nice job of is breaking down the detail of the methods and the recipes that he's using. Again, it's not at all uncommon to find books like this that have really good pictures and so forth, and lots of information about what products to use, but they don't really tell you the details of the products. Or the techniques themselves. Like, here's a good example where Mike talks about the brushes that he uses for oil paint rendering. He talks specifically about the fact that he uses a fine tip round with a decent bristle, such as a number 2 round. And he talks in other parts of the book about why he prefers that, and that being that particular brush tip holds sufficient material, yet still has a nice sharp point that allows you to do very precise work. So it's just little things like that. He talks, like here, for example, about leaving your oils to soak, so to speak, on a piece of cardboard for about half an hour so that it leaches out the linseed oil. He talks in other places about specific paint ratios that he uses, the way that he thins Windex in his Windex chipping process that he talks a lot about in here. He talks about why he prefers hairspray over some of the ready-mix chipping fluids that you can buy. So again, just really good detail on the whys and the hows and the specifics of what he's using to perform each step. Something else that kind of goes along with that I really like about Rinaldi's approach and his style is something that sometimes my friends give me a hard time about, but that's okay. And that is precision of language. And I actually was chatting with Mike a little bit about this, and we both agree that it's important because let's take paint for example. We live in the model making world, in a world of very poorly labeled paint products. Look, let's just take an example here, and this is probably not the best example because this actually has a good label on it. Tamiya acrylic paint. They tell you right on here that it's acrylic. They tell you that it's flammable. So it's a little bit incomplete in that they don't tell you that it's an alcohol-based acrylic, but nevertheless, they at least tell you what it is. Let's compare that to, let's see here. What do I have on my shelf that we could look at? I'm looking at some Vallejo. Doesn't say anywhere on there that it's an acrylic. Now, you and I know that it is, and we know that it's a water-based acrylic. I've got some Model Master acrylics up here on the shelf. Again, it just tells you that it's acrylic, doesn't tell you that there's much of a difference between it or any other acrylic. Lots of all-clads are this way, and they're one of the most frustrating. They've got a number of different products in their lineup that include acrylic, lacquer, and enamel, and they tell you on virtually none of them what the product actually is. And so we get into a situation where there's a lot of confusion because of imprecise language. Someone, for example, will say, "Oh yeah, I just use paint thinner for that." Well, which paint thinner? Is it mineral spirits? Is it an alcohol-based paint thinner? Is it lacquer thinner? What exactly is it? And so that creates a lot of unnecessary confusion for model makers who may not be as experienced. And so you'll find as you go through this book that Rinaldi does a really good job of being very precise with the terminology that he uses. There's absolutely no doubt what kind of product he's using for each step, whether that be an acrylic or an enamel or whatever the case may be. So again, just something that I feel like is really good in the way that he breaks everything down. Now, sort of an overall thing that I really like about his approach, and that is how he explains his rationale for sort of the design of a project, I suppose you could say. Rinaldi's got a background in transportation design and the artistic side of it, and you really get that coming through in the narrative in this book, because he talks a lot about how he chooses specific colors and how they work together as an overall color palette for a project. These colors go with these colors. These effects work with these colors over here. Just basically giving you kind of an overall strategy for creating a look to a project that has more impact than, I guess, you might find in just the basic colors that you might choose. So again, he just helps you understand how to create not only specific effects for weathering that really bring a lot of impact to your project, but how to choose an overall strategy for your project that also builds that impact. And I really like that approach. Basically, I guess you could say that it's just kind of more of a philosophical look at this process as opposed to a purely technical look. And I really like that, because to me, the key thing with all this stuff is intent. Why do you want to use orange and cream and black? Why do you want to paint the tracks black before you put the dust layers on? Why do you choose a particular color of wash? Why do you use particular rust tones in a particular area? These are all things that to me really are what separate the really great work like Mike's work from the average stuff that's out there. So if that's what you want to do, if you want to bring your work to a higher standard, then this book will definitely give you a good look at how to do that. Okay, so there you go. I kind of got to rambling a little bit as I was leafing through it, but hopefully you get the idea. I think this is a really cool book, and I think that it's kind of unique in amongst the all the offerings that are out there for books that tell you how to do this stuff. I think that Mike Rinaldi takes it to sort of another level, not only in explaining the details of how to do this stuff, but in the philosophy and really the why of doing all this stuff. So I like it. I think it's a great approach, and it definitely suits my way of thinking. And if you're looking to sort of refine your techniques and figure out how to get to that next level, this book is definitely a good place to start. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Much love.